Okay, here's the one I wanted to do this morning. I didn't with this voiceover because I wasn't sure how much I'd be able to do, but now I'm going to do a little more what I had in mind here. The article on Quillette.com. Yeah, that's it. It's a online magazine from Australia. It's just published just back on the 17th, written by Barrett Wilson. And a very perceptive thing on something called, what is this thing you call, the link will be down below. What is this thing you call social justice? It's about how Star Trek has just gone off the rails and they've really lost the plot. Let's start off here. Star Trek Discovery begins its second season this week, with its producers no doubt hoping for a smoother start after a first season marred by considerable behind-the-scenes difficulties and uneven reception from the hardcore fans. They're being kind of kind, frankly. After major delays and a series of sudden creative staff changes, many plot lines were introduced and quickly abandoned. Fans were frustrated with the show's inability to adhere to the Star Trek canon, usually often flouting in that canon, and chewing us out for actually daring to care about this. Whole first season was chaos, but hey, at least the succession of showrunners were able to signal their progressive bona fides to the woke social media legions. Because God knows any of those woke social media legions. They buy lots of stuff, don't they? No, they don't. They're finding the hard way. All of them are Marvel Comics, Star Wars, Doctor Who. They demand these changes, then they don't bother to show up and buy your stuff. So guess what? When all's said and done, you're stuck with us. And we ain't happy. Indeed, they started well in advance. Before Discovery had even premiered, former showrunner Aaron Harberts, one of them showing the door along with Gretchen What's-Her-Face, was on a press tour boasting to the fact that Discovery is going to take on the Trump presidency through its storytelling. Anybody else remember Roddenberry talking about taking on the Johnson administration? Me neither. It didn't happen. He knew better. The allegory is that we really wanted, when he started working on the show in earnest around the time the election was happening, said showrunner Aaron Harberts. The Klingons are going to help us really look at certain sides of ourselves and our country. Isolationism is a big theme. Racial purity is a big theme. Harberts, incidentally, is one of the showrunners accused of verbal violence and subsequently let go after the first season was complete. Yeah, I think he was one of them that had no clue what DS9 is. Once I think someone said, didn't they do that on Deep Space Nine? What the frick is DS9? Okay, and he's in charge, right? Star Trek fans didn't appreciate that in the initial episodes, the lead character, a woman of color named Michael, for some reason, had no moral backbone, had no redeeming qualities other than a high intersectional score, and the supporting cast seemed to have been assembled for reasons of diversity over talent or compelling character. This guy gets it. That had nothing to do with what you looked like. It had to do with the fact he was a moron. And everyone else was even a bigger moron. So, Worst of all, Discovery turned the Klingons into hairless race supremacists, an embarrassing two-dimensional depiction of one of the most popular alien races in the Star Trek canon. Echoes of the deplorables' rallying cry of "Make America Great Again" can be found in the Klingons' rallying cry for racial purity, "Remain Klingon." The parallels were so excruciatingly obvious that CBS had to publicly deny any direct connection. Also, in the Mirror Universe thing, Lorca actually explicitly said to make the Empire great again. They never gave up on it. Yeah. In the first 2 episodes of Discovery, which serve as a form of origin story for the rest of the season, Klingon leader Kuvma preaches to his followers, in a very insulting thing, like he's trying to read these things phonetically, has no clue what he's saying, through the marbles in his mouth and the 50 pounds of latex in his face, that the Federation must be attacked because humanity, in its like-minded democratic allies, seeks to impose multiculturalism on the galaxy. Takumi preaches a Klingon-first mindset in an attempt to unify the 24 disparate Klingon houses. The Klingons might as well have been chanting "Build the Wall." The message behind the first episodes is mind-numbingly simple. Diversity, good. Trump voters, bad. That Trump voters are hairless, ugly apes who, look like orcs. Orange mad bad is not a policy, guys. Okay. Star Trek fans are smart, though, and they took to the internet to call Star Trek out on its virtue signaling. This led to a litany of media-approved think pieces defending the social justice agenda of the new series, including one cringe-worthy attempt by a writer at the Mary Sue to break down all Star Trek series, including Discovery, according to Quota. Yep. it's a common tactic. You say you guys are screwing up. Well, you did it too. That's not denying they screwed up. No. Just trying to deflect blame. Diversity is a good thing. Art can be used to make political statements, and not all anti-Trump art is bad. I'm also willing to grant that episodes later in Discovery's first season became more watchable as the production team began to show more respect for the Star Trek fandom and canon. Too little too late, frankly, in my book. But there's no getting around the fact that the overt, reactionary tone of the early Discovery episodes had all the subtlety of a Kathy Griffin tweet. This was particularly jarring when set in comparison to some of the classic episodes from this historic franchise's past. While Star Trek has always been broadly liberal in its politics, including the first, I'm going to say scripted interracial kiss, because there have been some spontaneous ones and some specials, most notably Nancy Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. It's like a few months before. It has typically been classically liberal and appropriate in opposition to what we would now call political correctness, identity politics, and mob justice. And by pausing to appreciate some classic episodes, we may find hope to conclude that it's not too late for Discovery to, of course. I say it is too late because they've done too much damage. There's no course left. They're lost in the woods. There's a link here. There's a link to the scene of Kirk and Spock. Anyway, Kirk and Uhura and Plato's stepchildren. I'm not going to put them in there because I really don't feel like getting a copy strike on this thing. But it's also one point out, and then Tim Pool did one of the earlier, which is where I track this down from. It's like you think, but at the time, in the mid to late 60s, this show was not politically correct by any stretch of the imagination. Be politically correct back then would have meant an all-white crew of red-blooded, blonde-haired, blue-eyed American men going out there and making the world safe for democracy. This was not that show, okay? So this is not the show to be politically correct. It's just to challenge the status quo of the time. Say, hey, you're not doing this right. Look at this. Let's look at this another way here. And let's see. In particular, it's hard not to get shivers rewatching a 1967 episode of the original Star Trek entitled Return of the Archons, in which Captain Kirk and crew encounter a society whose behavior is entirely regulated by a centralized authority called Landru. People walk around in a collective daze and greet each other with platitudes like peace and joy to you, my friend, and contentment and tranquility. Later in the episode, Dr. Melinda McCoy, who's been indoctrinated by Landru, more like really brainwashed by a device, computer thing, lost the place, realizes that Spock and Kirk were just pretending to be absorbed as he was. McCoy becomes hysterical, pointing and screeching at his shipmates, "You're not of the body!" and calls for lawgivers to arrive and correct them. Which is basically what now happens here on planet Earth when an unpopular opinion is expressed online. Leslie Jones, I'm looking at you. Kirk and Spock eventually confront Landru, who turns out to be a software artifact. This is the first case of Kirk Fu talking to a computer into blowing up. So they pose a series of queries that lead to Landru's self-destruction by convincing the entity that since its own definition of evil applies to itself and its mandate to destroy the evils of society, it must self-annihilate. Yeah. Let's see. And thus were the fates set for Nomad and M5 and probably a few others. In the 1992 Star Trek Next Generation episode, The Outcasts, Commander Riker becomes romantically interested in Soren, a member of an androgynous race whose society is apparently blissfully free of gender. The alien race, called the Janai, forbids gender specificity. As Riker and Soren get to know each other, they share information on their respective mating rituals. They grow fond of each other. At one point, an exasperated Riker tells Soren, "For 2 days, I've been trying to construct sentences without personal pronouns. Forgive me if the old he or she slips by." Soren smiles and nods because, not being a 2019 era culture warrior, she is an adult and not insane. Soren boasts that the Janai process for reproduction is less risky. Riker quips it is less enjoyable. She explains that the idea of gender, it is offensive to my people. Long ago, we had 2 sexes as you do. We evolved into a higher form. An unintended foreshadowing of a vision promoted by modern social justice activists who insist that the future is non-binary. This was not just non-binary, it's singular. And it's another, it was, and I'm breaking here, it's like, it wasn't really, because they at the time they said they didn't go far enough on the issue. But this is also the early 90s here, so there's only so far I'm really going to go. I think they did a little bit on DS9 when you had Dax meet up with an ex-wife back when she was a guy. And that one really put it to a head there. Okay. The pair eventually fall in love, and Soren is arrested by her people as a result. The Chennai authorities force Soren to chemically alter her physiology in order to become sexless and genderless. Conversion therapy, anyone? Riker tries to intervene and take the blame for Soren's attraction, but Soren does not accept his help. She faces her inquisitors and says, I am female. I was born that way. I have had those feelings, those longings all my life. It is not unnatural. I do not need to be helped. I do not need to be cured. Doesn't work. It is a powerful legal in defense of individual rights and the freedom to live who you want, but of course it does not persuade the Chennai authoritarians, and they use her impassioned pleas as incriminating evidence. She is then sentenced to psychotechnic perversion therapy. Yeah, and it's also a good mark of a good Star Trek episode. It doesn't necessarily have a happy ending. There's a lot of them like that. Even going back to original series and some next gen ones here. Riker goes rogue, attempts to rescue Soren from the Chennai, but by the time he reaches her, she has been pumped so full of drugs or ideology, what psychotechnic perversion therapy entails is not clear, that she claims that she had only been attracted to him because she was sick. She had been converted back to Chennai asexual normativity. Seen by the lights of 2019, the episode's story arc is eerie, to say the least. Riker might as well have tried to rescue an activist grad student from Evergreen State. The very best Star Trek episode that tackles social justice, as we would now call it, is the 1991 Next Generation episode, The Drumhead. This is Star Trek's own version of the Crucible. The Enterprise becomes 17th century Salem in this cautionary tale, as Captain Picard must fight a ranking officer who is conducting a show trial based on a fantastical conspiracy theory. Basically, the plot voice is there's an explosion in the warp core, and they catch a Klingon who was on board for something, accused him of being a spy. That's the ranking officer's distinguished Starfleet Admiral Nora Satie, played by Gene Simmons, not the Gene Simmons from Kiss. This is the British actress Gene Simmons. He was. She played Zira in Planet of the Apes, I recall. But she was, unless she was in Spartacus and them. But, she had a career going back then. She was, still is, I think she's still around. Anyway, getting to the else here. Who comes aboard the Enterprise to preside over the trial of a Klingon named Jadan. By this time, the canon Federation Klingons have become allies. He has been charged with attempting to sabotage the Enterprise. Jadan admits to being a spy of the Romulan Empire, which means hostile to both Federation and Klingons, but Admiral Satie becomes convinced Jadan had accomplices, and her ideas grow increasingly unhinged. He also denies sabotaging the Enterprise. It just happened. I had nothing to do with it. Satie deputizes Lieutenant Worf, the Enterprise's security chief, who also gets swept up in the moral panic that surrounds the trial. He promises Satie that if there's a conspiracy on board, I promise you I will find it, and starts rounding up innocent members of the Federation and the Enterprise crew for interrogation. A young crew member named Simon Tarsus is one of them. He is fidgety and nervous and has slightly pointed ears. Satie pounces on him and tries to restrict his movements. As it turns out, Tarsus indeed has something to keep from Admiral Satie, his racial identity. While Tarsus is innocent of any subterfuge or conspiracy, he is guilty of having a Romulan grandfather, something he had kept secret in order to pursue a career in Starfleet. The cruelty and ruthlessness of Admiral Satie toward Tarsus escalates to the point where Captain Picard himself is forced to intervene. Satie rejects Picard's appeal for sanity and informs him that the head of Starfleet Security, Admiral Thomas Henry, is already en route to witness the completion of her trial. Satie then turns her attention to Picard and attempts to railroad him with false allegations of betraying Starfleet. This is also a cautionary tale about special counsels who are not bound by any particular thing, but just go wherever they find things. And in a ship full of 1,000 different people, you're going to find wrongdoing, okay? Human nature is human nature, and if they're not bound by sticking to one particular instance, and they'll every wrong, it's called process crimes. Okay? It has nothing to do with the charge at hand, but hey, you got a speeding ticket in 85 to the guillotine. All right. And see, Satie betraying Starfleet. This leads Worf to snap out of his own paranoid hysteria and defend his captain. Of course, Worf is now implicated in results. Now they bring in the whole thing with him being, what is it? Discommoded from the Klingon Empire. They hadn't solved that one yet. No, it was discommodation.
No, it's never.
They booted him out of the Klingon Empire for a while in order to cover for Duras. Yes, so they hadn't quite cleared that up yet. Fate that can befall anyone who stands up for justice in the face of a moral panic. The episode reaches a crescendo when Picard uses the accusations against him to invoke the words of Admiral Satie's father, Judge Aaron Satie, legendary Federation lawmaker who warned about the dangers of denying due process in the name of safety. With the first link, the chain is forged, the first speech censored, the first thought forbidden, the first freedom denied, chains us all irrevocably. Satie is enraged and screams, "I've brought down bigger men than you, Picard!" And she just loses it. With this, the trial effectively comes to an end as Admiral Henry has now been witness to the delusional fanaticism of the once trusted Satie. Yeah, in fact, he gets up and walks out. It's like, okay, I'm going to 10 forward. I need a drink. The explosion aboard the ship that triggered the investigation is eventually determined to have been a simple accident caused by a faulty part. In fact, they did that halfway through. But that doesn't mean there's not a conspiracy. We're still going to, it's like, it was a faulty, casing. It happened in manufacturing. Doesn't matter. It's all a conspiracy. Once the trial is officially brought to a close by Admiral Henry, Worf and Picard discuss the hysteria that swept through the Enterprise. And we think we've come so far, Picard says. The torture of heretics, the burning of witches, it's all ancient history. Then, before you can blink an eye, it suddenly threatens to start all over again. I believed her. I helped her. I did not see what she was, Worf says. Mr. Worf, villains who twirl their mustaches are easy to spot. Those who clothe themselves in good deeds are well camouflaged. Vigilance, Mr. Worf, that is the price we have to continually pay. Now, say this is also a good mark of Star Trek, that as the times change, there's still stuff that this stuff applies to. In fact, DS9, it was like, still 90s. It was done. What it was started like the entire run was in the 90s. So when 9/11 happened, and you had the war against terror, it's like, you could go back and watch DS9. It's like, ooh, they were rather ahead of the time here, weren't they? Because there's a lot of stuff in there that really fits there. Not so much Voyager. Voyager's, it really was TNG light. There's some stuff there, but not much. Yeah, these are just a few examples of the many. It's a few of the many examples in which Star Trek warned us about the perils that attend any fanatical mindset, even those that begin with apparently virtuous intentions. The entire Borg storyline, for instance, is all about the dangers of the hive mind, which can extrapolate a society's natural desire for unity to its pathological extreme. There's another scene from the original series that I keep coming back to. I've written about it before in relation to the Twitter shaming of Chris Rock. It's from the 1969 episode called The Savage Curtain. Lieutenant Uhura comes face to face with an alien entity who is projecting the image of Abraham Lincoln. The alien is struck by Uhura's beauty. He calls her a charming negress, and then immediately realizes he has said a problematic word. It's, "Oh, forgive me, my dear. I know that in my time some use that term as a description of property." "Why should I object to that term, sir? You see, in our century, we've learned not to fear words." Their response epitomizes the hopeful, humanist sentiments that made Star Trek resonate with fans in the first place. It reflects a vision for the future where diversity is a given as opposed to an obsession, and where resilience and confidence were prized over sensitivity. And where you didn't have people trying to ban, "Oh, it's the N-word! It's not..." The one thing that's about the N-word, I as much as I don't need somebody, pulling a clip of me saying it. So, as much as I'd like to quote Blazing Saddles here and there, as well, but suddenly when they start doing that, you say the N-word, it's like, what are we, kindergartners? Really? It used to be, it's always been an offensive word. No one has ever said that it was okay. Okay. But once upon a time, society, we were mature enough to even at least say it in context and point. The Jeffersons and even all in the family, once in a while, someone would usually be George Jefferson who would say it. I remember it was one thing where he's trying to, Willis's wife's parents. What were their last names? The ones who lived upstairs from him in the building. He was trying to, they're talking about they were the perfect couple. You can't tell me that when talking to the wife, that when you get really angry, you don't want to call, don't say, okay. And you don't tell me when you want to come back. And he says it. And this is prime time, CBS. like 7:30 or we're in the middle. This was regular TV, and it went out, and the sun still came up. Civilization did not come to a screeching halt. We all went on, and I appreciated this situation. We got the joke. We were all grown-ups back then, even though I was like 10. For God's sakes, whatever happened to, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Now it's like, oh my God, you're tricking me. Grow the hell up, people. God. Alrighty. While the original and best captain of the Enterprise continues the fight against social justice extremism on Twitter to this day, it's a beauty to behold when some of Bill Shatner said when he goes after these idiots. He's having fun. They don't realize it. He's having a ball. And they're, one is in a paralytic flits. Let's see. The franchise itself is in danger of trending in the opposite direction. Whether Star Trek Discovery can succeed depends on whether or not its creative team can begin to tell stories that don't rely on pandering to activists and instead engage with broad audiences. Following Uhura's advice would be a good start to writing a listing ship. And again, that was Barrett Wilson, the former social justice crusader, writes for Quillette and Arrow, is an editor for the Post Millennial and a satire site The Swift, and follow him on Twitter at @BarrelWilson6. Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the bottom here. But yeah, as far as trying to write Discovery, that's a lost cause. I'm sorry. It has gone too far down the rabbit hole on that one, and I mean, yeah, you could fire the entire writing staff, bring in Ron Moore and other Ira Stephen Barron, and have Brandon Braga moonlight from Orville once in a while. But what are you salvaging at this point? Nothing fits on there. The science is all over the damn map, and none of it accurate half the time. Sonar in space, anyone? Please, how did that ever get past anything? Do they even have a science advisor on that show? Or do they think they're so high man that, we don't need that, we know this, and clearly you don't. And like one thing is like, when they're going, they're basically copying JJ Trek when they have the Discovery go warping in there, boom, right in the middle of an asteroid, and then, oh my God, we're being hit by rocks. And have you tried to just kind of come out of warp before you go on top of the rock? So, and how do you not see that coming out? The sensor's totally blind. It's now hyperspace to deal with, not warp drive. There's just too much stuff that doesn't fit at all. Cannot be made to fit because you end up having to make everyone look like idiots. And you're trying to explain, why the science shifted from, where it was in the cage all over and then back to where it essentially was in the cage when you get back to where no one has gone before. That's the thing. What are you salvaging, really? None of it is worth fitting into the timeline. It's all wasted effort trying to salvage this thing. So they better just cut it loose. Now, frankly, whoever takes over this nonsense, when it does crash and burn, and it will crash and burn, it is in the process of crashing and burning. This whole happy talking, we shot up 72% subscriptions. Yeah, for the AFC playoff game. Nothing to do with Discovery or Star Trek. No, come on. You're not fooling anybody. I've already heard that most of the people subscribing to CBS All Access are for the football. It has nothing to do with any of the programs. Certainly not Star Trek Discovery. But basically, you want to salvage Star Trek as a property? One, get rid of Kurtzman. Get rid of Discovery. Don't bother, just don't even pretend it's part. I don't care how much Prime happy. It is not Prime. It has obviously never been Prime. It's never enough fit. Just cut it loose. Stop pretending. Bury it. I don't know why I even bother trying to sell it. Nobody wants the DVDs apparently, Blu-rays. Also, 86, all of the in development stuff, because it's also wrong-headed and going, based on the wrong thing. Bring back Enterprise. Give them that one last season to wrap things up, or if it works out, a few more seasons. For one thing, I'd like to see that NX refit on the screen with a secondary hull. And you can work it. It can be a shortened season. You can get Bakula during the NCIS Los Angeles, New Orleans, hiatus, and everyone else can work it out there. Do the 14 episodes here to get things a little back on track, give it a better ending than what Moonves gave it. And definitely, just basically retcon out that, these are the Voyages here. Because everyone's where they chalk it up as just a bad hologram program that Riker got a hold of. All it is a historian to go and say, that's not how it happened. That's not what the ship looked like. What the hell? Where'd you get this? And get it up to the Romulan War. Maybe even maybe do a thing on the Romulan War. It didn't have to be about the Enterprise at that point. You can pick anybody. But also start bringing back writers who know what Star Trek is and how to write it. Because it is not just, writing science fiction. It is a specialized niche. You got to, it's got its own feel to it. You got to know how to do it. And there's a learning curve to writing Star Trek as opposed to writing just any old science fiction show. Because that's what Discovery really is. It's any old science fiction show. And it's not a very good one. Because the motivations are all wonky. And it seems like you got these writers who they do that because it's sci-fi. That doesn't work. It has never worked. You got the people that actually show some intelligence in what they do. And because go back to that first episode, everyone's leaving ship, just leaving them in the battlefield. They're not going to salvage them. See if there's any survivors. Make sure that the critical information equipment can't fall into the hands of the enemy. That kind of thing. Both sides did that. Klingons and Starfleet did that. So you have it, all sides are idiots, which means they were written by idiots. I think John Burns had a problem with writers who can't imagine characters more noble than themselves. That's why everyone's a jackass, a backstabbing moron with morals of a weasel. They don't believe in heroes anymore. I think it's a big thing. We've got generations that are totally not very the concept of heroes. And then Star Trek was kind of found, and these people are supposed to be heroes. It's one thing that chafed against, Harlan Ellison when, the fighting over City Edge Forever. It's supposed to be heroes. No, Kirk wouldn't do that. And I was like, no, that's the whole point. It's like, the love is so strong that even Kirk would, no. Because one thing Harlan forgot about is we got to live with these guys. You're doing the one script and you're going on to the next thing. We got to live with this guy next week. Yeah. So, he was going to throw away the universe for Edith Keeler, and Spock had to stop him. It's like, what happens next week? It's like, yeah, remember we last week, if you wanted to throw the whole thing away from it, why should we trust you now, Spock? Nothing, that's another issue. That's another topic another time about why he thought he could do that. This isn't a Twilight Zone. It's Dorothy Fontana, one of the afterwards on this. If it had been a Twilight Zone episode, it would have gone through probably unchanged. But this is series television, and we got regular characters we have to care for here. So, but that's a big thing. Is to bring back writers who know what the hell they're doing, who know something about Star Trek and what it's supposed to be. And it, like I said, in Shatner's point out, Roddenberry's a big liberal. He was not an SJW. There's a distinction between the two. Because one of the big things of classic liberalism is leave people alone to live their lives the way they see fit. That is not what's going on here with these social justice warrior types. They've got their mindset, and then to make sure they beat that mindset into everyone who opposes them. That is totalitarianism. That is fascism. When you go, either use the state to enforce your will against others, or just your own brute force. That's not liberalism. That is totalitarian. That is just mob rule. And so, frankly, don't be surprised when the mob comes back against you to say, bug off. So yeah, Leslie Jones. You wonder why they're doing the Ghostbusters 3? That's why. You had your chance. Go away. Don't go away, man. Just go away. So, PayPal, Patreon down below. Keep the money coming, guys. It helps a lot. And we'll talk at you later.